Hello there, and welcome to Spectrum Debate number 18, whether you're watching on YouTube, Google Plus, or elsewhere. Thank you for your patience. We've had a bit of an issue tonight with Google Hangouts themselves not letting us on, but we got round it thanks to an inordinately helpful idea from Josh Kerridge, who is with us tonight. Tonight we will, of course, be debating a variety of topics that have been chosen by our guests, whom we shall meet in a moment. But as ever, we want to hear your views, and we want you to send in questions or points to challenge each of our guests. You can do so using the hashtag SD18, which appears on your screens. I'll do my best to put your points to our guests and to let all of our other viewers know what you are thinking. If you are watching on Google Plus, you can also use the Applause app, which tells us how much you agree or disagree with what is being said at any particular time by any of our guests. And at 9 o'clock over on SpectrumDebates.com, our weekly poll is launched asking who your favourite debater from tonight was. To let you know, last week's winner, with 33% of the vote, was Daniel Van Cleek of the Green Party. It was a very tight contest, just over 1% between first and second place, and over 530 votes were cast in that poll. So that was more than double the number from the previous week. Let's see if we can beat 530 from this week. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to each of our guests, and we'll find out what it is they're going to talk to us about tonight. We begin with Leon French, who is a Conservative. He's standing for Doncaster Council. He's also an undergraduate at Hull University, a musician, and is a returning guest. Good evening, Leon. How are you?
Hello, I'm alright. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much indeed. What's your topic tonight?
Tonight I'm going to be talking about the proposed pact that Nigel Farage has proposed with the Conservative Party after the next general election, and why it's a load of old rubbish.
Thank you very much indeed. The next guest, is a returnee. It's Christopher Keane. Christopher is a member of the Scottish National Party. He hails from a beautiful part of the UK. Please don't hate me for that one, Chris, though. He is an elections expert, and he's here joining us again after a prolonged absence. It's nice to have you back, though, Chris. How are you?
It's nice to be back. I'm very well, thank you.
What's your topic tonight?
I'm going to be talking about the recent remarks by the UKIP MEP in Scotland, David Coburn, about Hamza Yusuf, or Abu Hamza, as he called him.
Thank you very much indeed. Our next guest is another returnee. It is Joshua Kerridge. Joshua, who is from Norwich originally. He's a student. He is a libertarian, and he's here tonight with headphones that are even bigger than mine. But it's nice to see you again, Josh. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Good. What about you?
Fine, thank you very much indeed. What's your topic for tonight?
My topic is the UK's investment into the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the quarries that the Americans had with us as well.
Thank you very much. Our next guest is a returnee. It is Harry Samuels, who seems to be very hungry right now, but has decided to consume his stationery. However, Harry, who in fact was on our first broadcast show, has returned. Harry's a member of the Liberal Democrats, Social Secretary for the Liberal Democrats at Oxford University, and he's here with, I think, perhaps, I haven't seen those curtains before on Spectrum, so welcome, Harry. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Superb. Thank you very much indeed. Much more calm now that we've got everything sorted. What's your topic for tonight?
Tonight I'll be asking why parties, in particular the Conservatives, are so in love with throwing money at pensioners while they're so afraid to help young people.
Thank you very much. And our final guest, last but by no means least, is Bradley Alsop, who is a Green Party candidate in the local elections that are coming up. Bradley, welcome to Spectrum Debates. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You'll have to remind me which part of the world you're from, because I forgot to check in my panicked preparations.
I'm from Northampton, although I'm not a local candidate. I'm the chair of the Young Green group there.
There you are. You see, I should have done my homework better. Thank you for coming on, Bradley. And what's your topic for tonight?
I'd like to talk about the issue of MPs having a second job, particularly in light of the announcement by, the finding out of Grant Shapps having a millionaire webmaster job whilst he was an MP in 2006.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. A big welcome to all of you at home. Just to remind you, my name's Gareth. I'm your host for tonight, and for full disclosure, yes, I am a Conservative, but I'll do my best to challenge each of our guests equally and forthrightly tonight with your help. So far tonight, we've learned that Pyro is the keeper at Pyroanus, is watching us whilst naked, that John Hudson is concerned about whether or not we really do want to hear his views. John, you know we do. And Arik Galinsky is a bit shocked that 530 people watched this show. Strictly what I said is 530 people voted in our poll. Whether or not they all watched us, I don't know, but I will say thank you to the 5 people who voted other and Gareth as the best guest last time, and thank you in particular to the 1 who voted for other full communism now. But we always welcome your comments. Just a little bit of news tonight before we begin. Those of you who follow us on Twitter will probably have seen over the last 24 hours that we've attracted the attention of someone who is very much in favour of Scottish independence. And he seemed to take exception to 1 or 2 of our guests, including a member of the SNP who has appeared on this show a couple of times, accusing him of actually being a UKIP mole called Harry or Kenneth or something or other. He said that we were something to do with Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service agency, that he'd reported us to the First Minister of Scotland. He was going to take us down, and that I had only got people on this show because I had been threatening and grooming you all. Anyone who'd like to have a look at these, you'll see I've tweeted some images of these wonderful things, and there are even some comments on our Facebook page. If anyone can decipher what the bloody hell he's talking about, we'd be very, very grateful. And we have got Chris on tonight, who happily volunteered to prove that because you're a Scottish nationalist does not automatically mean that you're a complete fruitcake. So thank you for coming on, Chris. Can I ask you a question to begin with, though? What is it? Mm-hmm. Because I think it's fair to say that nationalist parties, in terms of the SNP and UKIP, and I'm going to put those in the same block there, do somehow seem to attract a slightly higher proportion of fruitcakes, particularly on Twitter, than other parties. Why?
I'm inclined to disagree. I think there's as much fruitcakes in any other parties. I think maybe they come a bit more to the fore in parties that tend to be more active on Twitter. And certainly, if you look at something like, I wouldn't put UKIP and SNP in the same category, but they're both parties that are very active on social media. So maybe you're just more likely to come across that there. I've met plenty of Labour people, Lib Dems, Tories, described as Zoomers or whatever as well. I don't think it's representative party.
Can you explain the phrase Zoomers? Because I saw someone refer to this gentleman as a Zoomer, and it did make me laugh, but I have to admit I didn't understand it. What does it mean?
You'll have to ask someone else, I'm afraid. I've kind of lifted it up from its general usage now. I'm not familiar with where it's actually come from.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you very much. So if anyone would like to help us out with that, would like to translate these rather strange ramblings and attacks that we've received, do let us know. But I'll also add that we did invite Mr. Moody onto this show to give him a platform, but he also insisted that his mere presence and intellectual prowess would be so profound that the rest of us would have a nervous breakdown. I can assure you that I feel that's unlikely, but if anyone would like to give it a go, please do. If anyone can translate it, do let us know. And in the meantime, if you are watching, our colleagues in Mossad, thanks for joining us, and thank you obviously for rigging the vote for the Green Party representative to win that last week. Anyway, without further ado, let's go to our first topic, which this week we've chosen off-air, and the first topic is going to be opened by the estimable Leon French. Off you go, Leon.
Well, I think chosen is quite polite, but never mind. As I say, I'm talking about the pact that Nigel Farage has offered the Conservative Party after the election. If you look on Twitter, you only have to look for about 5 minutes before you see the Labour press office start saying, "Ooh, look, they're more Tory than the Tories already." I genuinely believe this pact is not a genuine offer. I think it's done to damage the Tories. Without sounding self-victimising or a bit conspiracy almost, we know for a fact that Nigel Farage is not fond of the Tories anymore, and he's certainly not fond of David Cameron. He said previously that he will not work with the Conservatives whilst David Cameron is the leader. So why on earth would he now offer a pact? I genuinely think he knows he's not going to have to follow up on it, and it's just done to give us a slight kick in the teeth. There we go.
Thank you very much indeed, Leon. Anyone here on the panel like to start on that one for us? Harry, actually, let me come to you first, because you used to be in the Conservative Party and you're now in the Liberal Democrats. And I know that you've expressed some concerns over how the Conservative Party may be moving in relation to UKIP. What do you think about this offer? Is Leon right? Is it a ploy by UKIP? Is it a genuine offer? What's your view?
Well, shalom aleichem to you and our Mossad colleagues.
Shalom.
But well, like you said, and like somebody already has picked up on Twitter, I did used to be a member of the Conservative Party, and I stood for them last year. And this was part of the reason why I left. Because within the Conservative Party and within the grassroots circles, and this is significant because although the leadership are quite forward-thinking, a lot of the backbenchers and the grassroots are decidedly not. And there is a movement towards shifting further right and harshening attitudes and public attitudes towards immigration and social issues and race and the EU, which I found deeply uncomfortable. I've always identified as someone who is quite liberal, and I used to think that there was a liberal wing within the Conservative Party, and yes, there is, and it's quite small. But I just think that with the rise of UKIP, and I think that with the rise of this sort of acceptable nationalism, that wing is being shouted down more and more, and that this nationalistic element will be played up further and further. I think we are going to see a Conservative Party commit to withdrawing from the European Court of Human Rights. I think we are going to see a Conservative Party redouble its efforts against migration, and I think that they are both bad things. So yes, I think that whatever people are saying, whatever people are thinking, I think that there will be a push for a UKIP Conservative coalition in May, and I rather preempted that by leaving because I will never ally myself with anybody who allies themselves with UKIP.
Thank you very much indeed. A couple of comments we've had so far before I go to Josh. Blue Liberal. Gavin. See, I can read Cyrillic. I thought everyone knew Gareth Anderson was Mossad. El Tigo at Miss Lily Summers. I can confirm that I've been threatened by Gareth Anderson several times. See you next week, Lily. You're on this show. Got it? Several people commenting. Several people commenting on Christopher's Scottish accent and how much they like it. Although Eric Galinsky at A Galinsky is also pointing out that you are horribly on message tonight, Christopher. That's we there. At Little Lego Fiend at W_O_Brown. I'll come back to that reference in a moment. The SNP does not equal fruitcake. I quite like fruitcake. It's comforting and timeless, almost Tory. Dale Taylor at Dale_Taylor. The SNP is a party that hates Britain. UKIP is a party that believes in Britain, not the same category at all. Where are we? Adam Keeley at Adam_Keeley. We should go it alone. No pacts, no minority deals, no coalitions. What would Thatcher think? John Hudson, of course, Nigel Farage and David Cameron hate each other. A confidence agreement is the best result. A pact is to ensure votes. Thomas Smith at Smudge Thomas. The UKIP offer is rather like a Venetian mask, something old trying to save face. Chris G at Chris G 0000. UKIP takes more Tory than Labour votes. If UKIP wanted a pact, they'd offer to stand down in over 400 places where they can't win. Loads of comments already. This is superb. You can tell Top Gear's not on anymore, can't you? Josh.
Okay. I'd like to start off and say, with Harry's point that Conservatives are moving more towards the right. I just have to completely disagree with that. I would say Conservatives are moving more towards the left. They're starting to distribute, the income and wealth of the country. So that's an indication that they're moving to the left. Because a party is becoming more nationalistic, that doesn't mean they're moving to the right either, because you've got things like communism. They're completely nationalistic, and they're all driven towards a kind of a certain goal. I think also, Nigel Farage says these things and then goes back on them a few years after to try and gain an advantage. I think the pact is the one that's more truthful. The one he said a while ago about how he would never work with David Cameron is complete rubbish, because having some power is better than having no power. So I don't think it's rubbish. Yeah, that's about all I've got to say.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of the actual offer, the offer is clearly just an attempt by Nigel Farage to keep himself relevant. The fact is that UKIP, despite their sort of considerable poll scores for a while, are still on track to win at most 5 to 10 seats. I mean, there's no pollster really thinks there's going to be any significant UKIP breakthrough in this election. The actual power brokers after the election are going to be the SNP, and we've had particularly David Cameron, desperately trying to tell Labour off for any potential plans to do a coalition with the SNP. It seems to be becoming very much kind of the meme of the election now. It's all about don't let Scotland have a voice. How terrible that they tried to go independent, but now they want to have a say in the country that they didn't vote to remain part of this time. So, like I say, I mean, I think the entire matter of Nigel Farage can say what he wants. It's irrelevant. He won't have any say in the next government. Kingmakers after the next election will most likely be the SNP, and essentially, he's just out for some publicity. This is like cheap, easy material for him.
Thank you very much. A few comments that people have made before I come to Bradley. Bradley the Mole, this is a different Bradley. Bradley B95. No one is addressing the real issue here. Who is Kenneth? Yes, apparently I'm also called Kenneth. That was another thing that we got from our special friend from Fife. A couple of other points, though. Dale Taylor, UKIP have ruled out a coalition with anyone. He's also pointing out, he says, that UKIP's most receptive areas are safe Labour seats. We're a completely different force to the Conservatives. Salman Anwar at S_Anwar95. Tories are going more to the right. Not sure about the race thing, though. John Mousley, the patriotic, not nationalistic Harry. That's a point for you there. Chris G. Farage's offer was made in order to sell his book and to get a headline for the Telegraph. It's not serious. Cameron S. at Cameron_surname. I thought the offer was good. Country over parties moment. Safe Tory hands pushed to a fair EU referendum ASAP. John Housley points out it's a DUP-UKIP confidence agreement that they are looking towards. Robert Winfield 2. I go along with this morning's article in Con Home. UKIP's divisive style and negative tone risks losing any EU referendum. Where are we? And El Tigo, Lily Summers. I don't think Farage wants a pact, but it's clear that Cameron would love UKIP's MP's support after 2015. Bradley, what do you think about this? Happens all the time, don't you worry. What do you think about the issue of the offer that UKIP and the DUP have made in the event of a minority Conservative government? And what do you think the role would be of any Green MPs?
Well, I find it interesting that Farage has made this offer because he has previously stated his objective before retiring from politics is to destroy the Conservative Party. So if he thinks the best way to do that is to be in coalition with them, then good luck to him, but it didn't work out so well for the Lib Dems. I think in terms of what it would mean for the country, I'd much rather a coalition being SNP. I think, if we're looking at people that are going to have the power, it's either Dems or SNP. And I'd much rather it be, I think it would be much better political debate for us if it was the SNP or even the Lib Dems than UKIP, because their rhetoric is so damaging to the country. In terms of the role of the Greens, I think we are going to poll much better than we did in 2010. In terms of what that will translate as seats, I don't think it will be as much as a lot of our supporters would like. And I think that will just highlight even more how we need changes to the electoral system.
Thank you very much. Now I've got a question here, in a sense, for I suppose it's for you, Bradley, and also for Chris. And it's raised to the point that you've just talked about there, UKIP not being an effective partner, their wreckers and so on, and it's better for the SNP or perhaps the Greens and so on to take this role. But Nigel Farage has made clear over the previous 2 years that he would be willing to work with anybody. I think the phrase he used was sell his soul to the devil if he'd get what he wants, which is an EU referendum. And he's made clear at various times that although he doesn't like Miliband or Cameron, he'll be willing to do something to get the referendum. However, is it right that the SNP, and I think to an extent therefore the Greens, have said they will only work with a Labour government? They won't try and exert any influence on a Conservative minority government, for example, or a Conservative coalition. They will only do any sort of deal, confidence and supply and so on, with Labour. Does that not immediately reduce their negotiating power? Does that not sort of make a mockery of the fact that actually perhaps they can get a better deal from Party X than Party Y, but they'll only deal with Party Y? Chris?
No, I disagree, because I mean, in terms of getting the best deal, it matters where we're starting from. I think basically in terms of the SNP, we're looking specifically for the best deal for Scotland, and well, we're not going to get that from the Tories. The Tories are not a party that represent what's good for Scotland.
But don't you say that Labour don't either?
Well, I do, but I think Labour's closer to our position than the Tories are. It's like obviously Labour doesn't have the sort of priority for Scotland that we do, but I think there's more I agree with Labour than I do with the Tories. There's almost nothing I could probably agree with Tory on in terms of economic policy, ideological priorities.
Isn't it arguable, though, that a Labour Party who perhaps could lose their general ability to win an election across the UK isn't going to be predisposed towards working with the SNP, whereas the Conservatives actually, comparatively, don't really have anything to lose. In fact, it's probably in their interest politically for the SNP to wipe Labour out in Scotland. So aren't you likely to be able to pull a few more strings there? Why rule it out entirely?
Well, first of all, the SNP's performance in Scotland has no impact on making the Tories do better. The Tories have no chance of winning seats in Scotland.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Well, yes. Well, the point is that we want to have a broadly left-of-centre government, and that's not going to happen in the case of the Conservatives. There's just so little that SNP and Tories could possibly ever agree on. There's no point in even postulating a coalition between the two parties.
Fair enough. Harry.
Yes.
Well, what do you want to say?
I'd like to first of all challenge Joshua's idea that the Conservatives are in fact moving leftwards. This is a party that has put out vans telling migrants to go home. This is a party that's now threatening to withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights. This is a party that has put into place legislation and has tried further legislation to snoop on people's private business. I mean, that is a movement towards, we can talk about up, down, left, right spectrum, but on the traditional left, right spectrum, that is a movement rightwards. You talk about redistribution of income, that is the only redistribution of income that has taken place, a tax cut introduced and theorised by the Liberal Democrats. That's not Conservative policy. It's
Is
Harry frozen for anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, Harry, you've frozen for the rest of us.
He's frozen for me.
Okay, I'm just going to read a tweet or two here. Okay, Harry, just a couple of tweets here about this and see if you want to come back on it. Chris G says, the foreign aid commitment, equal marriage, NHS spending ring fence, record immigration, and you think that the Conservatives are right-wing extremists.
Am I back?
Yeah, you are. Go on.
Well, you see, those are all things that first of all, same-sex marriage. The majority of Conservative backbenchers voted against that, so it was carried through Labour and Liberal Democrat votes. NHS spending ring fence. The NHS is the sacred cow of British politics. No party, even UKIP, want to ring fence NHS money.
Hang on. You know, at the last election, that the Liberal Democrats didn't promise to ring fence the NHS spending, and Labour actually said it will be dangerous to ring fence NHS spending. The only major party that promised to do it was the Conservatives.
Because they have a record on the NHS which they needed to combat, and evidently it hasn't worked. The fact of the matter is that no party practically can cut NHS spending, or they will get absolutely ruined for it in the media. For whatever reason, it is a sacred cow. So the Conservatives have moved rightwards. the left-wing issues that they put into, or the centrist issues and the tax cuts that they put into place are entirely as a result of the Liberal Democrats. And I don't want a Conservative majority government that would scrap me of my rights, invade my privacy, and sort of be a big question mark over issues of social policy.
Thank you very much. A couple of other points, and then I'm going to open it to the rest of the panel before I ask Leon to close. Arik Galinsky, electoral reform klaxon. Gavin at Blue Liberal One, all these coalitions are bad. We need a Metro Liberal caliphate. Lily, Farage won't be leader after May 2015. Don't only listen to him. Ria deal with UKIP post-general election. Charles Tennant at UK_Tennant. The coalition wouldn't just be a Conservative UKIP pact. There will be more parties in it that would stop some UKIP policies. Robert, where are we? Robert Winfield, the Conservatives are committed to an EU referendum, and David Cameron said he won't continue as PM after the general election unless he can secure this. And there's a wonderful thing from Manic Merkel here, which I'm just retweeting. You need to go and have a look. They're always superb. Dale Taylor, breaking pledges is the Lib Dems' idea of standing up to the Conservatives and their harsh policies. And Chris G, record immigration, more EU laws signed up to than ever, control orders abandoned, ID cards abandoned, Harry's living in a parallel world. Will Bates, a couple of points here. He's making the point he thinks that basically the Greens aren't going to be going anywhere. And the Conservative movement on things like the ECHR is posturing. They can't leave it while staying in the EU. And he also says that UKIP can and will have MPs well into double figures. Josh.
Okay, so going back to the right and left spectrum, the right side is purely economic inequality, so not taxing and not distributing wealth, and private property, whereas the left wing is complete distribution of income and wealth, and there is no private property. It's purely owned by the government. So in that respect, Conservatives are moving towards a more left-wing standpoint. You kind of make it out to you kind of make it out to seem that right-wing is purely bad. Like, they introduced these policies like, you know, you're not allowed to do same-sex marriage and stuff like that. That's just kind of a really radical conservative view. It's nothing to do with being on the right and left spectrum. It's also you know, more government intervention. It's not left or right. That's not an issue. You know, a left-wing party can definitely have a policy like that. So to state that's the reason why Conservatives are moving to the right is just complete rubbish.
What intervention are the Conservatives implementing? What economic policies are they implementing to move further left? I can't think of one.
Quantitative easing,
help to buy schemes, you know, setting up new houses. That's all government intervention. If they were purely right wing, they wouldn't be doing any of this.
Those are government interventions to promote like private ownership, though. I mean, you can't say, you know, like promoting private ownership.
Yeah, but
housing is a left-wing scheme.
You're distributing other people's income to do this, so that other people can get it. If it was just moving to the right, you wouldn't be distributing those people's income. It would just be left to the private.
To social control, where, you know, where councils distribute housing to those in need rather than encouraging people to buy from new build property developers.
Yeah, housing is a whole other topic. I don't think we've got time to go into, so I'm going to stop both Chris and Josh on that point. Bradley, do you have anything to add on this one before I ask Leon to close this topic?
Really hard comment. I think it's quite clear to see that you know, many of this current Conservative government is doing things that even Thatcher didn't dare to do. You know, we've seen a fire sale on public services, you know, privatisation, creeping into education, the NHS. You know, even the sacred cow, the NHS, we've seen that creeping in there. I think there have been a few kind of social policies out there, like the Picnic Marriage Bill, that socially liberal. But in terms of purely economically speaking, really pushing the right. Really,
Okay, thank you. We've got most of that. You broke up a little at the end. Leon, right, you're going to close this topic now, and then Bradley, it's going to be your turn to open up yours. Leon, final comments, please.
Well, I mean, in response to the left-right stuff, when I've got people on the left saying that we're going right, and I've got people on the right saying we're going left, I tend to think we're probably doing something right there. And I don't mean right as in right wing, I mean right as in correct. But going back to what I was initially saying, I think a lot of people on Twitter and whatnot have said, I don't think Farage is serious about a pact, coalition, deal, whatever you want to call it. I don't think he's serious at all. I think he's just trying to put the boot in. He knows that if we say no, and we say, no, we don't want anything to do with you, then he'll come along and he'll say, oh, well, look at them Tories, they're just disregarding public opinion, whatnot, they're arrogant. If we say yes, we'll have the left, we'll have Harry, I'm sure he'll say it, that we're going all really right-wing and we're evil immigrant, bashing, gay-hating fascists. Which isn't the case. I really think the problem is we are now caught between a rock and a hard place. Whatever we do, we've gone wrong, unfortunately. And that is what Farage has wanted to do all along. There's no truth in the pact at all.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. That was nice and a clear ending there. Thank you all very much for your comments on that topic. We're about to move on to our next. At this point, I just want to remind you that on Sunday, the 12th of April, yes, we are going to have our very own election leaders debate here on this show. Now, normally, we try and tone down the partisanship, but on that date, I would like us to properly ramp it up. Let's see if we can have a thorough, engaged, detailed election leaders debate. So what I need are people from each of those 7 parties who are supposed to be involved, whether or not it really happens on TV, to come along and be their spectrum leader that night and really go for it. I've already got the Conservative, so now I just need everybody else. All right, so if you're interested in that, let us know. A couple of other comments here before we move on to Bradley's topic. A confused ninja. Hello, Ian. At a confused ninja, he points out to Lily that she should be careful. Gareth is highly trained in Krav Maga, and he's not afraid to use it. Continuing the Mossad theme there, of which we are, of course, very grateful. Thank you for your comments. Our next topic, please, is from Bradley, and it's about MPs and working. Off you go, Bradley.
Yes. So the Guardian broke a story recently about Grant Shapps when he was an MP in 2006. He was found out to have been a millionaire webmaster. He was running games online and advice services to people stinking rich. And he was supposed to be earning, over £1 million doing sort of thing. But it's kind of thrown open the age-old debate whether MPs should have a second job while sitting in the House. Personally, I think if you're a member of Parliament, it should be the only job you do. I think if you do the job properly, it should be quite time-consuming enough. I think it pays certainly enough money, especially when you give back to expenses. There's a really kind of worrying revolving door between and Parliament as well. It's difficult to see how MPs are taking advice decisions that are of interest when they're when they've got shares in a large percentage of the market, and they're constantly being lobbied by corporate interests when they know they're going to be retiring to a cushy job on an arms contractor at the end of the Parliament. So I'd like to put that out there. I'd like to suggest that MPs, their only job should be within Parliament, and I think that they should have to give up any large amounts of shares that they have in large corporations as well.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to go to Leon first.
Could I respond with a question? What's his face? Ed Miliband. He wants to be the Prime Minister of Britain, but he's also the MP for Doncaster North. Which job should he pick if MP should be the only job?
Is that not a problem, Bradley, that we have a lot of people who also serve not only as their constituency MP, but also as a government minister, or as a cabinet minister, or as prime minister, and that takes up an awful lot of time. Is that not in and of itself a problem? I'm not sure if we've got issues there.
Hello?
I lost what Leon was saying.
Sorry, the point Leon was just asking. Go on, Leon.
I said basically Ed Miliband wants to be the next Prime Minister of Britain, yet he's also the MP for Doncaster North. You say that MP should only have one job. Which job should he pick then if he wins?
Oh yeah, I at least support a separately elected head of state as well to replace the monarchy, but that's a whole other issue as well, I guess.
Okay, Chris.
We need to look at this sort of, I think, historically first, because I mean, obviously, at one point MPs weren't paid at all because they were assumed to be professional or businessmen who would still be, having their own income from other sources. And the main reason why we introduced MP salaries in the first place, so that people who weren't from professional business classes could get involved in politics, especially when the Labour Party was first formed. So I'm inclined to think, well, first of all, MPs obviously shouldn't matter what background you come from. And it's wrong to have second jobs as well, because again, it's still kind of creating two tiers of MP. And it does also, of course, mean that you have MPs who are in the pocket of whichever company they hold a directorship in or something. And I think that really this is just a very small part of what is a much bigger issue, which is like political party funding as a whole. We have this system now in this country where politics is generally funded by donations, which can be great when it's from like small donations from party members and such. But increasingly it's down to big business interests funding the Tories or trade unions funding the Labour Party. And what this means is that people are essentially buying influence. In the way it happens the same whether you're donating to a party or just to an individual MP or paying the MP to do something. What we really need in this country is a complete reform of party funding. We need to have parties funded by public money, ban all kind of lobby business donations, and just take that influence out. Make politicians representative of the people and ensure they don't have any conflicts of interest in their finances.
Thank you, Harry, and then I'll go to some comments.
Well, I think, first of all, you can look even further back than MPs, and you can look at the members of the Assembly in ancient Athens, and they were paid 1 obol for their attendance. And that wasn't to prevent them having other jobs. That was because humans are innately greedy, and that's not a bad thing, by the way. And paying them encouraged them to come along and vote. And I think it's incredibly, we're basically contributing to this culture where we ask MPs to be the literal reincarnation of Christ and bathed in holy water and to do nothing wrong and to be completely pure and have no salaries when they represent their people. And I just think that's completely unrealistic. We want real people to represent our people. And yes, they're paid a salary by Parliament. In my opinion, it's not enough of a salary. It's why we get abuses of the expenses system. But if they have another job which keeps them in touch with the real world, if they have other jobs which enable them to keep in touch with other issues around the world, so consultancies and things like that, to draw on their understandable expertise, I see no problem with that. So long as they're declared and so long as they're on an open register so we can scrutinise whether those jobs are influencing their votes, I really don't have a problem with it. And I think people who are asking for MPs to be purer than pure are asking for too much, because humans will never be that.
Thank you, Harry. A few of the points that you've made at home, or of course wherever you are tonight. We've had Elliot Smith at Elliot Smith, who points out it depends what it is, as long as being an MP comes first and the second job doesn't interfere, I suppose. Where are we? Yes, Robert Winfield. MPs should be permitted to have second jobs or outside interests. It keeps them in touch with the real world. Gavin, if it affects how they vote, it's bad. If it doesn't, it's a good thing. Salman Anwar, yep, full of envy. He's a millionaire. How dare he? Chris G, a person who wants to have a second job should be prevented from standing as an MP, even if his constituents want that person. A confused ninja, if MPs don't do other jobs and are constantly re-elected, are they always going to appear out of touch? Actually making, in a sense, the reverse point. If all you do is stand as an MP, how are you going to remain in touch with people? Where are we? Someone else here. Thomas Smith. If people objected to MPs having second jobs, why would they vote for so many of them? Salman Anwar. 2 tiers of MP. You know what created 2 tiers of politician? The Scottish Parliament. John Hudson. asks John Husserl-Mousley, is it bad that an MP can be a local councillor as well to stay in touch with their community? Chris Latimer, an MP is elected to be an MP. They should not be allowed a second job, in my opinion. Salman Anwar, we should increase their pay. This would increase the talent from it being a better paid job. In terms of the specific point Chris made about party funding, John Mousley points out, no, I'm not prepared to give my money to people who hate me and my ideals. And the gunslinger, at the oncoming, no, but more transparency over donations and lobbying is needed. Well, Joshua, anything to say about all of that?
Yeah, I agree quite a bit with most of the Twitter comments saying how MPs should be allowed a second job. But in relation to how they would perform and lobbying, and I think somebody also mentioned they should have higher pay to get more talent. In regards to that issue, it's slightly different to employers employing someone because they'll be selective of it. But with politicians, it's actually people voting them into power, so they get to be the choice of what kind of talent goes into Parliament, not actually their pay. So I think we can be quite decisive in that regard. I think also if they're doing a poor job in Parliament, then they're just going to be voted out when it comes to the next election. It's not an issue because the people get to decide what happens to those poor performing people. So if they want a second job, then they can, and if they're doing a bad job of it, then that's their loss.
Thank you very much indeed. A couple of points here. People might want to think about them. Particularly you, Bradley, might want to think about these for your closing. Should there, says a confused ninja, should there be a limit to the number of terms someone can be an MP for? And also, do we need a full-time Parliament? Do we create too many laws? Other people pointing out here that other people can have more than one job. Why can't an MP? Large increases in MP salaries are politically impossible, says Robert Winfield. Chris G. Paul Beresford works as a dentist and an MP. What's the problem with that? Does an MP even know what a real job is? Asks Charles Tennant. Matt Valancourt at MV Libertas. Perhaps not. Look at Texas or New Hampshire. They have part-time legislatures. So some points there. Leon.
Chris, you mentioned the point of state funding of political parties. Just one word, no. No, with lots of O's and a big exclamation mark at the end. I've got a few reasons, apart from the obvious, I don't want my money to go to a political party I don't agree with. First point really is, how do we decide which parties get public funding? Is it any party that is registered as a political party? So FUKP, Monster Alien Looney Party, Citizens for Undead Rights and Equality, do they get funding from the public purse? I doubt it. Or I think if we start saying that the state should fund political parties, I think you run the risk of allegations of the state sanctioning which parties are allowed to exist or not. We kind of already do this. I mean, we probably would try to limit the actions of a proper Nazi party. But I think if you could run the risk of limiting parties from being active through cutting funding for whatever reason. I just think it's a totally dangerous for democracy way of going about it.
Thank you very much. Christopher, do you want to respond to any of those?
We'll come back from that then.
Yeah.
Well, the fact there's already state money going to political parties. It's called short money. It's paid to parties in opposition in Parliament to fund their activities as members of the opposition. Other countries already provide funding for political parties for their own advertising purposes and such, though. It's usually done on quite simple grounds, such as if they have seats in Parliament or if they got a certain number of votes in the last election. It's not like, it doesn't have to include your loonies and other minor assorted parties. As you're saying, it's kind of bad democracy. I mean, I disagree. The current situation where politics is funded by people who have an interest in funding it to get certain laws passed, or to encourage certain move in a certain political direction. And what they said, it replaces that with there's just money comes from the entire public public, so there's no loyalty to one special interest group, and there's no need to go out seeking funding when election campaigns coming up. What it means is that MPs can just represent the people. There's no conflict of interest anymore once you take out private funding.
Is that argument about cause versus effect always a bit of it's one that's easily set, but not one that I think is potentially easily supported, is it, Chris? Because, for example, why would people interested in the freedom of international finance support the Conservatives, and why would people interested in the role of trade unions support Labour? Is it because they believe those MPs can be bought to change their minds, or because those parties have a natural tendency to support the kinds of things that those organisations also support? I mean, is the funding the cause of the policy, or actually the funding is the effect of the political position?
I think that ultimately the problem is that the entire principle of democracy is meant to rest on one man, one vote. We're all meant to have an equal say. You start putting private money into politics, though, it becomes a matter of £1, one vote. It's a case of how much influence you can buy determines your political strength, and that means that certain groups in society become far more politically important than others, and that's not democracy.
Okay,
putting the state in charge of funding is dangerous, frankly.
Well, just to be cheeky here, would it not also count the fact that Sean Connery funding the SNP, for example, is that not the kind of thing that might be called into question?
I'm not familiar with him doing so. I mean, certainly in the referendum campaign, we had the Weirs obviously provided quite a large chunk of the funding for the Yes campaign, which was out of their own, kind of just private generosity essentially. But still, the point is that that's kind of a one-off case. I would rather see a sustained connection just between public money, so that there's no need to ever rely on supporting private financing of political parties. A case of political parties there to represent people, not just the people who are paying them.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else, any final points before I ask Bradley to close this part of the debate?
Just Chris said something quite interesting about £1 per vote.
Yep.
This is something that actually surely would answer Leon's question about who decides who gets funded. Just look back to the last election, and for each vote you get £1. I mean, that means that you're not funding a party you don't like, and you vote, you give your money to the party you want to give it to.
Leon? I mean, it's quite a good idea, isn't it? A party gets in funding £1 for every vote it received at the last general election.
Who does it get that pound from?
Sorry?
Well, let's say it's coming from the general it's coming from the general taxpayer in terms of the fund. But is that not fair? Would that not be a fair way of doing it? The Party X got 2,500,000 votes, so it gets £2.5 million a year from the taxpayer to run itself. Is that not fair?
No.
Why not?
Frankly, no. I just honestly, I'm really going to give a terrible reason and just say I just don't think it's fair. If I want to give money, or anyone wants to give money to a political party, it's up to them if they want to.
But that's not fair, because that's then limited based upon your ability to give money. Not everybody has an equal ability to give money to causes they support.
That's the same with charity.
So political parties are charity.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if I want to give money to a political party, then I will do. Frankly, I don't want to, and I am going back to the money argument. I don't want to fund UKIP. I don't want to fund the BNP.
Well, you
I don't want to fund
who you vote for.
No, I'm just talking in a general sense. You don't fund the party that you vote for. The state does. That's not necessarily £1 from my pocket, me taking that pound out of my pocket and giving it. That's the government saying, well, this is done, so here's that money. I just think, no, let's not have state funding of political parties.
Okay.
Don't keep it as it is, because the status quo isn't working. Don't do that either.
Bradley's going to close this topic in a second. Just a few comments that people have made online before he does. We've had Marsman at Marsman Talk, who is known to, I think, Harry and I.
Oh my God.
Yes. Fact MPs want to do second jobs shows that being an MP isn't a full-time job, so a £70,000 salary is more than enough. Little Lego Fiend W_O_Brown. Hello, William. Many MPs who have second jobs help run a business. They have a stake, so that business, should that business lose, the reduced input from their owner. Various other bits more. Too many laws is even such a thing. Drunk on sarcasm, says Chris Brown at C Brown Archer. Lots and lots of comments on this one, and I can barely keep up, in fact. So thank you. Bradley, to close on the issue of MPs' second jobs, please.
Yeah, we seem to, I mean, a few panelists seem to be suggesting that we live in this kind of bastion of democracy, but let's be honest, we're talking about who should decide which party gets funding, which party is legitimate. Currently, the people that decide that are press barons and massive big business in this country. That's if you dig deeper into Conservative Party funding, even Labour Party funding, it's quite a disturbing picture that emerges. Again, like I was saying, the stakes that members of Parliament have in various businesses. If you look at the amount of money that's spent on lobbying members of Parliament, this idea that we live in a really well-functioning democracy really begins to erode. I think we simply have to do something about that. I think part of it is the reason why the public supports so many policies that simply aren't ever implemented by Labour or Conservatives. I think the idea of state funding parties is a really good idea. Definitely support that. I think it's one way to make sure everyone's getting their fair say and parties aren't being stamped out because they don't support a certain economic policy that gets them the backing of big business, but a lot of the public would like them. And I think this idea of MPs being out of touch, I think if they're doing their job properly, if they're doing it as a full-time job, and part of that role is going around the constituency, it's about being in touch with the people that elected them. That's something people massively complain about. A lot of people, when it comes to election time, say they don't know anything about the member of Parliament. And I think, if we want people to be in touch, then there's no reason they can't do that as an MP if they're doing the job properly.
Thank you very much indeed, Bradley. Thank you for your comments. Our next topic is going to be opened by Harry in just a moment. Just to remind you that you can go to spectrumdebates.com now. You can vote for your favourite debater. We had 531 votes last week. Let's see if we can beat that this week. And also on spectrumdebates.com you will find a number of blog posts. You'll find my manifesto, where people have, in 140 words or fewer, written out one idea they'd like to see people put forward in this election. You're very welcome to write one of those yourself. Just send it in to the email address that appears on the website, or DM us at Spectrum Debates on Twitter for our details. There'll also be a new blog post going up on there tomorrow from Leon, who's on here tonight. And if you'd like to write for us in any way, do let us know. Our next topic then is Harry.
Well, it's very simple. Why do political parties, and the Conservatives in particular, seem to get sexually aroused by giving lots of money to pensioners and cutting away all support for young people?
Okay. Well, there we are. I'm sure there are websites for that kind of thing. I'm going to go first of all to Josh. I'm going to come to you because economics is your thing. Is there an economic imperative in the state providing more money to older people whilst reducing it to younger people in general? Is there any sort of economic argument for or against that? What do you think?
I kind of think it's a complete mess, to be honest with you. You don't really want to be giving too much money to old people because that just de-incentivizes people to save up for old age, to invest into pensions and such. But I do think it is important in general. I'm not completely, anarcho-libertarianism. I think also with your point that Conservatives aren't invested into the younger population it's not very true at all. I mean, look at, they're building houses for first-time buyers. Is that not young people? And like the Help to Buy scheme, that's young families as well. They haven't really. I wouldn't say there is too much of a movement in that direction. But I think it's also important that to notice that a majority of the Conservatives' votes are actually coming from older people. I think probably because younger people tend to look at more social policies like equality and stuff like that. So I don't think there is a huge movement in that direction, but I think it's kind of a bit of a mess anyway.
Thank you very much indeed. A couple of the comments we've had so far. Eric Galinsky demands that we ban this filth. John Mousley. Well, the answer is because pensioners vote, unlike hipsters. Simple. Lily makes the point again, because pensioners vote and young people don't. Chris Brown at C. Brown Archer asks, Harry, what the hell's wrong with you? Manic Merkel at Manic_Merkel has tweeted a very helpful link for you here, Harry. Pensionerfundingfetish.org. I'm not going to click on that link.
Well, it's .org, so
in case my iPad expires. But I think we take the point. Leon, I'm going to come to you shortly because this is the party that's being attacked here. But I'm going to ask Chris, because Chris, not only being in politics, also knows about economics. Tell me, Chris, what's your view?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm inclined to agree with Lily and the other persons that kind of point that it's probably largely political. I mean, this is a political argument in terms of pensioners are more likely to vote. Therefore, as a group, they're more valuable to political parties because they're basically a larger vote concentration. So it makes sense political parties are going to go out of their way more to appeal to pensioners than to younger people who don't vote as much. So young people go out and vote on May the 7th. In terms of the actual economics of it, I don't think it's a particularly good idea. I think investing in young people generally makes more sense, particularly in education. Education is one of the things where we can really, make an improvement in how well an individual is going to do throughout the course of their life. I forget who says it now. The quote, education is the best provision for old age. If we invested more in young people setting up their own independence for their lives, then that will have the best outcomes, I think, at their, when they become pensioners at their end of life stage themselves. State pension obviously very important. It has to be funded. It has a very sort of major safety net role to play. But I think in terms of the overall economy, it shouldn't be given any more priority versus what young people get. And I'm against all cuts to public services and welfare naturally. But if you're going to have a situation where you're cutting only services for young people or like education, bringing in tuition fees, then it's simply unfair that pensioners are getting off quite lightly. The two groups should be treated equally. Although like I say, that should be in my case more funding for both groups.
Thank you very much. Couple of tweets from people here. Manic Merkel is adding, don't click on that link. It's supposed to be .gov.de, not .org, which is a completely different website. Okay? So please don't. Cameron, pensioners are hipsters too. It's just they're plastic. Plastic hips.
That's awful.
So I quite liked it. Cameron Sinclair. Because frankly, old people are more informed on current affairs by the media, and so they vote at a higher rate. Adam Keeling, if older people have contributed well to our economy, why not have security in retirement? Little Lego Fiend, I can't actually speak, he says towards Harry. Apparently it must be because I'm just so aroused at throwing pennies at pensioners. Serious point here from Weird Times, at Weird Times. As far as I can tell, the Conservatives are only helping wealthy pensioners. They're doing nothing about those being ruined by the price of care. Gavin, thanks to the state, the house the old people bought for £1 is now worth £500,000. And SD, the gossip, at S_debate_news. Tories become sexually aroused by giving money to OAPs. Host Gareth says there are websites for this. We've seen his history. It's true.
SD.
And finally, Bradley Booth. Bradley B, 95. Bloody SNP, Christopher Keane, always going on about independence, personal independence, national independence. But that is a fellow SNPer. He's ribbing you. Okay, Leon, your party does get a little bit obsessed with pensioners at the expense of the young, doesn't it?
No, I think most parties that have any desire to really be in government do, because, as has already been stated by several people, it's purely political. It's the fact that these are the people who are going to vote. If young people aren't going to vote, which frankly they don't, then you're not going to throw money at young people who then aren't going to vote for you. If you win over the people who are going to vote for you, then you're going to chuck money at them. I personally wouldn't. Funnily enough, I was campaigning in Doncaster the other day. Hang on. I was campaigning in Doncaster the other day, and I knocked on somebody's door. It was an older woman, and I asked what she thinks the priority for government should be after 2015, and she said, "Oh, I think government needs to stop throwing money at young people. They need to give us a break for once." And I have to admit, I did think, "Are you serious, love?" But no, I can see where...
Leon, you've just presented a rather pessimistic view of politics. I mean, is there nothing about vision or ideas or morality anymore? Or is it simply which particular groups can we throw public money at in order to vote for us? Is that really where we are?
It depends who you are, and I hesitate to say yes, if just out of fear that Central Office might be watching. But I am a rather pessimistic and cynical person, so frankly, if I thought, if I was a bit of a so-and-so like that, if I thought that was the only way I was going to win, I'd probably end up doing it as well. But of course, I'm a lovely, principled person, so I'd never do that.
Thank you very much. Bradley, surely old people who are on fixed incomes, they deserve this help, don't they? Whereas young people can go out and you can go out and work, go and get a new job, get a second job. Old people are on fixed incomes. Isn't it right that the Conservatives are throwing more money at old people, perhaps at the expense of young people?
Well, I don't think there necessarily needs to be a conflict between the two. I mean, I certainly wouldn't support taking a support away from old people, but I don't see why we can't increase support for young people at the same time. I really dislike this kind of really negative view of politics that we're only going to do what's going to get us votes. It's not about that. It's about doing what's right for the country. It's about like you say, having an aim. And I think the reason why the Conservative and the Labour didn't defend as well, support young people. Partly it's because of their vote, but also it's because they know they can't give young people what they want. They're too tied into an economic model of doing things that doesn't allow them to give them things that young people want. And it's about finding a party that's willing to break from that economic model.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments, then Josh. Chris G, how moral. A young man says, take money from the old to give to people like me. I do love how the left dresses up self-interest. Weird times. The SNP have done more for pensioners with their policy of free visiting care. Meanwhile, countless English elderly people are being ruined by the cost. At you ludicrous fools, Stradihuvius. Hello. But there's a cyclical element to the issue of young people not voting and older people getting the money thrown at them. How are young people supposed to vote when no one is representing them? Ian Johnson. No, I can't respond to that one because that's not relevant here. Cameron Sinclair, OAPs are more aware of what policies each party offers to benefit them. And again, it's a cause and effect argument there. Chris G, breaking news, we'll all be old eventually. A confused ninja, I think it's the government throwing money at the wealthier than the poorer, the wealthier elderly and the wealthier young people. Okay, Josh.
Okay, I'd like to make a point that we've been talking about this investment into older people rather than younger people, but I personally don't feel that there should be as much investment into these people as there is anyway, because you're constantly de-incentivizing people to put in, to save for the future, and I know at this moment in time we have a huge credit problem, so we're taking away money from people that they could be saving for pensions for later life, and we're just throwing it where we want to. So if you're going to throw it towards younger people or older people, it doesn't matter. You're still taking away these savings from people that could lead to a better quality of life in the end.
Thank you. Okay, Harry's had a lot thrown at him at this point, and we're going to be going on a long time if we keep going around. So Harry, I'm going to come to you now. Let me just say, I'm aware, Harry, that there's been a bit of a dig at you on this issue, but I'm sure you accept the basis of it. But go on, give us your response and close this topic.
Oh yes, I understand the response. All I'll say is that This is not me trying to take the pensions away from pensioners. I'm not talking about pensions. I'm talking about all of the perks. I'm talking about the free TV licenses and the free bus passes and the pension tax relief and the favourable bonds and the at least 2.5% raises in the pensions this government has brought in. You know, all of that, while the government at the same time is cutting away benefits for young people, and specifically the most vulnerable of young people. So we've had a lot of rhetoric about no housing benefit for the under 24s. Well, okay, for the majority of people, that's fine. But what about the LGBTQ young people who get kicked out of their homes and have nowhere to go? You know, it's policies that don't think about these things. And then we've got people like Chris G on Twitter, who talk about, you know, taking from the elderly to give to the young people. Well, to be perfectly blunt, the elderly have had their entire lives to save up, whereas young people need that extra bit of support to go on and be stimulated through that just a bit of funding now to be able to evolve into these tax-paying members of society later down the line. I mean, yes, we do want to give money to support young people going through university. We don't want that concentrated on tuition fees. I personally don't give a damn about tuition fees. It's about maintenance, and it's about giving people enough to live. So this entire argument about you're digging yourself a hole, you know, you shouldn't take away money from the vulnerable elderly, it's a misnomer. You know, the elderly should have their pensions, that's fine, they've paid into the system, but no more than that. Young people should have a bit of additional support throughout their lives, and throughout the start of their lives specifically. Now on to the next point, the point about cynicism. Yes, it is. I completely agree. That's completely the reason why pensioners have all this money thrown at them. It's because they do vote. But I have to ask the question, if that continues, what the hell do young people have to vote for? They just vote for Party A, who wants to spend 1,000 on the elderly, or Party B, who wants to spend 2,000. I mean, obviously it's much more than that, but you know, give young people something to vote for, and maybe they will vote, because at the moment, and this is another reason why I left the Conservatives, we see a lot of posturing about, oh, we'll give the pensioners a break, we'll help the pensioners, and yet we see everything that we have money and we have no jobs yet cut away from us and kicking the ladder out from underneath us. Like I say again, the elderly have had 50, 60 years to save for this. They effectively created the welfare state for themselves, and yet the young people are saddled with the debt of previous governments, the lack of support that comes from having to clean up that mess, and we're expected to bear the brunt of it. It's not fair, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you very much indeed for all of your spirited comments at home, online. They're continuing, but we're going to continue to our next topic now. I've just tweeted a link to a news story that it relates to, but we're going to have an introduction to it from Mr. Christopher Keane.
David Coburn, MEP, who was elected last year for UKIP in Scotland and has since made himself largely famous in the back of a variety of very badly worded statements to the press, recently said that Hamza Yusuf, the SNP Scottish Minister for Europe, or Abu Hamza as he called him, and so forth. So far he's gone on to say the statement was just a joke and jest. Someone else denied he made the statement at all. We haven't really had a clear picture of what happened yet, but largely I believe this shows that David Coburn is completely unfit for political office, and I think that such statements should be a matter for politicians, or parliamentarians anyway, to be sacked. So the debate is, should David Coburn be sacked? And of course I naturally believe yes. What he's been saying is bigoted, essentially Islamophobic. What he's saying is, oh look, his name sounds like Abu Hamza, oh they're both Muslims, oh therefore Hamza Yusuf must be a terrorist, this is just absolutely crude. It's not funny, it's not contributing anything to our political discourse, it's just simply something that isn't suitable for politics.
Thank you very much indeed. Joshua.
Yeah, I completely disagree with what he said. He definitely shouldn't have said something like that. But then you do have to point out other things, like I think Nigel Farage has been related to Hitler before and stuff like that. All this kind of petty politics needs to be taken out of politics. You shouldn't be calling people names. Like I think in Parliament it was quite funny, but David Cameron called Ed Miliband a turkey. He just went a bit more extreme than everyone else has. But yeah, it's completely unacceptable. It is petty politics. This kind of thing should be completely discouraged from the system of politics. But I don't think it's an indication toward a certain party. It's just more extreme because of the racism and the religion aspects built into it.
Thank you very much. Leon, do you have a view on this?
I'm surprised they ever actually let him out to speak. I'm surprised they haven't got him locked up in a cupboard somewhere, frankly. The problem is, I mean, as of yet, it's only that he reportedly said. We don't know. If you start sacking people over what they reportedly said, then there's a lot of people who probably should be sacked from all parties a long time ago.
And Jeremy Clarkson.
Oh, well, yeah, don't even get me started on that one. It's up to them, really. I don't really have an opinion over whether he should or shouldn't be sacked. If he has said it, it's a really horrible thing to say, because I can never remember this MSP's name, to be honest, but his name is nothing like Abu Hamza.
It's Hamza Yusuf.
Hamza Yusuf. Oh, there's a H in there somewhere. There we go, it's so similar. You know, it is, I think, as you say, it's blatantly Islamophobic. It's basically saying all Muslims are terrorists. And that's just not true, apart from anything. But I don't know why we get shocked by these things anymore, to be honest. In fact, I don't know if we still do get shocked by them.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a few comments, then I'm going to come to Bradley and Harry. Will Bates at William Bates UK. I think this shows how bitter the Greens are that we beat them to a seat in Scotland, that they're desperate to get at David. Adam Keeley, UKIP is scared to lose another MEP. Andreasen, Campbell Bannerman, Bashir, and now him. He's an idiot, sack him. He's basically BNP. John Mousley, Christopher is talking about this because David beat the SNP candidate to be elected. He goes on to say, so many sour grapes, ignore the voters, remove him, great advert for the SNP there. Lily, El Tigo, David Coburn is a clown, that is all. Bradley the Mole, the natural position is to say yes to everything, yes to Indy, yes to MEPs sacking. Coburn was just trying to hook some voters. I don't know what's going on there. Chris G. Christopher would sack MPs who had a second job and now sack MEPs who say the wrong thing. The voters should decide. Chris? Eric Galinsky. He didn't reportedly say it, he tweeted it. Bradley, what do you think?
Well, we made someone manage to have a dig at the Greens about this. I'm not sure how he ended up in the argument there. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't really think there's a big bet about it. You know, fans of it. He said in the polling thing. Not the first time he said something ridiculous either. Yeah, back him. I think it just kind of shows how determined it is that so many members come out with such outrageous things. Get rid of the guy.
Thank you. Harry, who appears to have gone. Is he there? Oh, no. Yeah, I'll come back to you in a moment, Harry. You seem to have gone a little... Hang on, Harry. You seem to have gone a little bit wobbly. So let's try again. Go on. No, that's not working, is it? Okay, we'll come back to you in a moment, Harry. Chris, tell me, I mean, you've heard a few criticisms.
Well, yeah, let's put some of the tweeters in first, actually.
Go on.
I mean, like somebody tweeted, for example, it should be in the hands of the voters. Now, I think something you have to bear in mind in terms of the voting system that's used for MEPs, which is one I don't agree with. Personally, I'd rather see a single transferable vote used for all elections. But Coburn was elected with a little over 3% of Scots voting for him after you account for the turnout. So it's not exactly as if there's this massive democratic mandate. His voice must be heard. He got in essentially because most people didn't vote, because European elections are just woefully, undervoted in. I'm trying to remember what the other person said now. Somebody said, I just want everyone to sack MEPs. Well, the fact is. It's one thing for someone a member of the public to just say, "Oh, I don't like that person. He's a insert expletive here." But we can't have political representatives being held to just that same degree. When you're a political representative, there's a certain sort of modus operandi you have to follow. And I think going around saying effectively that a Muslim is a terrorist, haha, he's got a name that sounds like a terrorist, that's not suitable for a political representative to say. That's not saying that's banning free speech. I'm not saying it's something you can't say. I'm just saying that in terms of being a parliamentarian paid by the taxpayer to represent people, that's not something in that position you should be saying. And what it proves is that he's unsuitable for his job and that he ought to go, that he shouldn't be an MEP.
So what's wrong with the election?
A couple of points for you here, Chris. First of all, are you saying that our elected representatives should have fewer rights in terms of freedom of expression than people who are not elected? That's the first point.
In terms of, obviously, there's parliamentary privilege and stuff, and the MP, within Parliament they're allowed to say, effectively anything without recourse. But even in Parliament, there are rules to follow in terms of, you're not supposed to directly imply that another MP is lying in the chamber, for example. Even at that kind of level, there's always been certain rules for elected members to follow. It's not just a case of this absolute free-for-all, say anything that you like.
And the second point is, I've seen this online, is this not just a tactic of the SNP to try and cover the fact that Nicola Sturgeon refused to go to the service, the memorial service for our servicemen and women who fought and died in Afghanistan?
Well, that's a nonsense in itself, because on the same day Nicola Sturgeon was occupied by going to a memorial for shot at Dunblane. Now, I'm not going to get into an argument over whether children shot in a primary school or soldiers shot in Afghanistan are more deserving of respect. It's not a point I think should be made political at all, but the fact is that she was at a different event at the same time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Harry in just a second. A couple of comments here. We've had Manic Merkel. David Coburn is a complete belter. That night was the worst experience of my life. John Mousley, sack him, screw the fact that he's elected. Adam Keeley, is David Coburn the Scottish Jeremy Clarkson? I think Jeremy Clarkson might sue you for that one. John Mousley, the SNP hates proportional representation, shocker. Chris G, if we sacked every SNP representative who I find offensive, your party would be banned. Come on, have a think. Cameron S, let's sack all MEPs, leave the EU now. Bradley's making the point that you've just made, Chris, about Nicola Sturgeon being at the Dunblane Memorial. Harry.
Well, I think unfortunately David Coburn suffers from a symptom that's pretty common to a lot of UKIP representatives, and that is being a wanker. And the difficulty is that the problem here is that racist jokes, which people see as common sense, normalise racism and lead to it becoming, just a joke. When actually for the people that are the butt end of those jokes, it makes life incredibly uncomfortable. So I'm not saying sack him. I would hope that voters have the common sense, the actual common sense, to chuck him out of Parliament when the next election happens. Unfortunately, I don't hold out much hope, because it appears that being a general idiot is seen as common sense and of the people nowadays. Yeah, I think he's made a massive error. I think it's a terrible error that people are trying to make light of when in fact it's something that should be stopped and should be challenged. And I think it's a wider symptom of UKIP's rise, is that people think that making a few racist jokes or making a few sexist jokes are in some way acceptable nowadays. The answer is that they're not, and they just perpetuate an environment of racism and sexism which needs to be stopped.
Okay, Christopher, normally people have the final word on this. Do you want to make it quick?
Well, I think generally, everyone's in agreement that what he did is generally wrong. It's just a case of whether or not he should be sacked. I think basically it just comes down to sort of having standards in politics, whereby we have to say, you can't just have absolutely anything. There has to be some lines. We have laws in this country against speech which is Islamophobic or racist, the actual in terms of incitement to hatred or anything. I don't know if I'd even say it went that far, but it was an extremely off-colour remark. And basically, I think it just comes down to that, in my personal opinion, elected represents in better than that. I think we should have a minimum standard that we should expect these people to follow, and that David Coburn just isn't capable of following it.
Thank you all very much for your comments. My apologies for the word that was used a few moments ago. I'm sure it was used. I'm sure it was used in a moment of passion, and that. No, I'm not going to say that. Our final topic tonight comes from Joshua.
Okay, I'll try and be brief with this. Essentially, there's been a problem between the UK and the US relationship because we have invested some money into the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and certain Americans in the White House don't like that at all because I personally feel that they want to hinder the growth of China because of past relationships, and that they don't think that China can actually, I guess, become capitalist in a way. They want to make China seem bad, and they want to make it seem like we're evil for trying to help them, I guess. It's just certain White House politicians, by the way. It's not a general view of the US. So my question is, should we be investing into emerging markets like China, which is nearly a developed market? And how far do you think that should go?
Thank you very much indeed. Christopher?
I think essentially there's two elements again to the problem here. I mean, there's a sort of geopolitical element whereby essentially is just the US trying to maintain its sort of kind of power structures in terms of its relationship with the West, and not wanting to have a new superpower coming up to rival it financially. In terms of the actual economics arguments, I think basically, it doesn't really matter to our own economic interests whether we're investing in America or in China. The optimum situation really, I think, would be some kind of green investment bank. That's what I want to see. A situation where we could, be investing in terms of our own renewable development, and also investing, having a sovereign oil fund from the North Sea, because that is an unstable resource, and we need that to be going into investments for the future. So one thing I find quite annoying is that we are investing abroad at all when we should probably be investing kind of in our own infrastructure and in developing ourselves. In terms of actually supporting China as opposed to another country, I don't see any good economic argument for why investing in a Chinese bank is worse than an American bank. Just like I say, obviously ideally domestic first.
Thank you very much, Harry.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd just like to very briefly say how amusing the irony is that there are people all aflutter that I used that word in the last debate.
Unfortunately, I'm going to stop you there just briefly because you froze after how amusing the irony is, and we didn't know what it was that was amusing. So start again.
I'd just like to point out just very quickly how amusing the irony is of people going all aflutter about the word I used.
He's frozen.
I think it's fate.
Yeah, it's your internet connection is not liking you. Yeah, your internet connection isn't liking you tonight. I think UKIP might be attacking your internet connection.
Oh, darn them! Am I back now?
Yes.
The irony of people getting all aflutter about the word I used in the last debate and not about the racism I was attacking. That's just quite funny. But that's by the by. On this issue, I think the government's doing the right thing. I don't think we should power.
And again.
Yes. Okay. We are having a bit of trouble with Harry's feed at the moment there. I'll come back to you if he comes back in a moment. Bradley, I'll come to you in a second if there's anything you want to add to this one. Just a couple of points here. Chris G points out that US corporate interests love China, and you're wrong, Joshua. The idea they want to stop China's rise is just not true. So he's making that point there. He says, I only wish the US was more robust about China's currency manipulation and so on, but the US is a debtor nation in relation to China. Harry, give us another go.
Yes.
We got the bit about the W word.
Good. I think the country's doing the right thing. I don't think we should pander to American interests or Chinese interests. Just our own interests. I have to say it's not that big a deal for me. I don't really care either way, but I think the right decision has been made.
Okay, thank you. Bradley, does this matter?
I think it does matter. I think China's an emerging force. I think essentially what's happening here is America's throwing its toys out the pram a little bit. I think there's a certain irony as well with, what a lot of the problems that America was citing was that this issue around the standards that this bank is going to be held accountable for. I think there's a slight irony in America saying that, because it's not as if their banks have been a bastion of moral banking. I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's good that we invest in various other countries. I think it's good we build up relationships with other countries as well as America. I think America just needs to get over it, really.
Thank you. Josh, you had some points to make here.
Yeah, I'd just like to...
In fact, hang on. You're going to close this topic in a moment, so I'm just going to ask if anyone else wants to add to it before you close it. So does anyone else want to add more here? Leon?
Well, firstly, in terms of the specifics of the topic, without sounding flippant, I don't really care. But in terms of the principle of it, if America doesn't like it, tough. We've got our own policy, and we shouldn't bow down to America, and I hope we don't. Simple as that. If they don't like it, well, oh well.
Fair enough. Well, that was nice and short and sweet. Harry, Chris, anything else you want to add before Josh closes this final debate?
I'd like to make a general point.
I think Josh wants to go first. He wants to say that.
Harry, then Chris, while Harry's internet connection is working. Go.
Yeah, I'd like to make a general point at the end, but not on this.
Okay. Chris.
No, I was saying let Josh go first. He wants to say something to me and I want to respond to it.
Okay, we'll have a little back and forth here, then we're done. Josh.
Okay, I'll just respond to the Twitter comment first, so I don't get it all mixed up. I did just say it was certain US officials that were saying that our accommodation in China is bad. So it's not the general view of America, as I said. And I think, Chris, if we're investing into China, are we actually doing it for our own interests? Because they're going to be Chinese businessmen. They're going to be coming into the city of London and trading. So we could easily be doing it for our own interest, and we could probably gain a lot of money from investing into their internal bank.
Okay.
Well, I agree in terms of we should be looking of interests. So I suppose in a large part it depends who will offer the highest returns. But I also think we need to look at problems like we have a major kind of trade deficit in this country. We have money flowing out of the country doesn't help our long-term growth. We have this money going through like an investment bank for ourselves. We're investing in our own infrastructure. We get construction projects going. If we have a sovereign oil fund to invest in these things, this is just a much better direction to go in rather than sort of looking to send money abroad at all in the first place.
Thank you. Right, Josh, time to close this topic, please.
Oh God, I think I've already closed it. I pretty much agree. But everyone, we need to make sure that it's not that we're supporting these emerging markets; it's that we're investing into these emerging markets so we can get a good return for ourselves. It's also important to note that we actually receive a lot of trade from these type of countries like China and Brazil. So we need to make sure that our interests are still there, and that we still have the money going in and out of this country.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments, and then Harry wanted to say something before I close tonight's show. John Mousley, anyone's money is good as long as we know whose influence is more important. Brackets, it's the USA's influence. Adam Keeley, sack Obama, long live Romney. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light? I wasn't going to sing that. Because that would just not have worked at all. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Harry.
I've just been accused of other side of the coin of intolerance. And this is something that gets levelled at people who are relatively progressive quite often, being called intolerant of other people's views. Yes, that's absolutely right. It's called being intolerant of intolerance. That's the basis of progressivism. Unless you're asking me to tolerate...
You keep attacking him again.
Harry, if you
you're not.
I mean, I agree with what Harry's saying, because the point is the idea that, to be progressive, we have to be willing to listen to absolutely anybody, even if they're spouting, off like homophobic views or anything. I don't think that is the case. There is kind of a progressive side and like a side that isn't. There's always going to be an argument. You can look back into like the 1960s when people were saying, "Oh, we have to have a voice to say that whites shouldn't marry blacks." In the historical context, that looks absolutely ridiculous. And I think in 50 years' time, Islamophobia and such will be viewed in the same way. It's like it's always just very cynical to say, oh, to be liberal, you must respect people who are offensive bigots as well.
Thank you. I'm going to assume, Harry, that you got the line intolerance from my personal Twitter biography, and I'm sure I made it up. So there we are. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you to my guests for joining us tonight. Thank you to Bradley and Harry and Joshua and Christopher and Leon. If you would like to appear down here next week, get in touch. I already have a Conservative panellist. I'm after anyone else who would be interested. So do get in touch. It's simple and easy to do as soon as Google sort themselves out. That'd be great, lads. Thanks very much indeed. And we'd love to welcome you here. Don't forget, we have our alternative leaders debate on the 12th of April. If you'd like to get in touch and represent your party in one of our rare forays into out-and-out partisanship, get in touch. That'd also be great to have you all on here. In the meantime, from Mossad, Lego, Kenneth, whatever I am, I'm really not sure. Thank you very much for joining us here on Spectrum Debates. We will see you same time, same place, or hopefully earlier next week. Good night.